Hi, this is Dave. Are you ready for the age of turmoil? Do you have a sense that the world is changing around you at a pace that is upsetting and in ways that are uncomfortable? Well, if so, you're not alone and your sense is pretty accurate. Just dive a little deeper into the issue and you'll realize that the change that we're seeing right now is more pervasive than we may have ever imagined. In fact, I believe it spells a new age that I call the Age of Turmoil. And our ability to successfully navigate it, the Age of Turmoil, will be the biggest challenge for the rest of our career. Let's take a little closer look. I like to use the concept of a whirlpool amid turbulent waters. And you know that's a great analogy to understand what's happening. Just as currents in the ocean crash together to form turbulent seas and whirlpools, so too currents moving through our society have come together to create an environment that is treacherous. Here's some of the currents that form this perfect storm. Number one, rapid change. I just don't know if we appreciate how rapidly things are changing right now. Let's just put it in perspective. In the year 1900, the total amount of information available to mankind was doubling about every 500 years. Okay. 100 years later, in the year 2000, the pace of information creation had multiplied and it was doubling every 2 years. So we went in the year 1900 to information doubling every 500 years, to the year 2000 doubling every 2 years. Now, think of the bell-shaped curve charting the amount of information available in the world. The curve would be going almost straight up. And today, the best estimates are the total amount of information available to mankind is doubling at least every 30 days, if not faster. And this increase in information drives innovation and it causes change. New information seeps into every area of our life and our businesses, and it causes change. Since the growth in the amount of information is unprecedented, therefore, so is the rate of change. And we're seeing entire industries being disrupted, products and processes coming and going in the blink of an eye. Not only is the pace of change unprecedented, but so is the depth of that change. It's one thing to accept a new technology. It's quite another to see a dramatic shift in cultural values. We're seeing values, morals, and core beliefs crumble in the onslaught of change. For example, you may recall that Obama, in his first term, opposed gay marriage. Today, the federal government is advocating for transgender inclusion. That represents a change in core values and is only one of many such challenges to values which have stood for thousands of years. So ask yourself this: is your life and your career, are things changing today faster than a few years ago? Are they changing at a deeper level? So the rapid pace of change is one current, smashing together with others to cause this whirlpool of turmoil. Here's another one: growing complexity. The explosion in the amount of information not only drives change, but it brings rapidly growing complexity. Everything is more complex and sophisticated today than it was just a few years ago. For business people, it can be something as mundane as the products and services sold. Almost every product today is more complex when compared to what was being sold for the same application a few years ago. Not only is every individual product more complex, but the breadth of product lines has grown in almost every vendor in every industry. 5 years ago, a company that had a product line consisting of 20 items today is selling 40. As computer software continues to develop, only gets more complex and sophisticated. Look at any software that you use today and compare it to the same software 5 years ago. Clearly, the number of features and options has multiplied. And while software is an easy target, growing complexity is moving through every aspect of our jobs and our lives. Ask yourself this: is there any aspect of your life or your career that is not more complex and sophisticated today compared to a few years ago. Here's number 3, rise in social media influence. We're all aware of the incredible growth in our social media, and while there is a whole slew of negative impacts, I'm more concerned about the impact it is having on fundamental human relations. Because its algorithms present us only with those posts and products to which we have already shown some interest, it gradually removes any competing ideas from our view. React to a couple of posts from MSNBC, for example, and you'll likely never see anything from Fox News. While this is great for selling products, it destroys a fundamental building block of a democratic society, and that is the respectful exchange of competing ideas. Since we only see things in people that agree with us, we think that anyone who doesn't must be a radical outlier. The impact of that threatens our democracy and manifests in everything from the Portland riots to the storming of the Capitol. Ask yourself this: has your use of social media made you more convinced of the correctness of your positions or less convinced? Here's another one: the politicization of institutions and businesses. Everything getting more political. Since the birth of this country, we have expected our government institutions and our businesses to pretty much be non-political. And while the temptation to use the government to push political agendas has always been an issue, it found new footing during the Obama administration. You may remember the IRS intentionally delaying applications from conservative applicants, for example, or the State Department's advocating the false idea that the attack on the embassy was caused by a video narrative, and that was all for political reasons. While the IRS and State Departments become operational agents to promote political agendas, while those were the most visible, you can't help but wonder what other government ministries were also bent to the cause. The door was open wider than any previous administration, and the subsequent politicians have run through it to the point where the previously well-respected FBI had members who attempted to overthrow a president. Wow. Our institutions have become agents for political advancement. And while every now and then you come across a company with a political position, it was a rare and unusual event. Today, it seems that every large company openly advocates for some political position. The Disney company is probably the most publicized example of this. You may recall the company advocating against the Florida Parental Responsibility Act, which, among other things, prohibited the teaching of gender fluidity to kindergartners. You know, I think this is a great example of the depth and pace of change. As recently as 2 or 3 years ago, it would have been crazy to think of the Disney company lobbying against parents' rights and for teaching gender fluidity to kindergartners. On the other side of the issue, Hobby Lobby won a case at the Supreme Court allowing it to be exempt from the government mandate to provide birth control to its employees. The polarization of this country now extends to the business sector as well. So here's one more, a current moving through our economy, smashing together to form a whirlpool of turmoil. Let me add this one: the death of journalism. Gone are the days of Walter Cronkite. In earlier days, the news media prided itself on its objectivity. No one, of course, today does. What used to be news is now unabashedly propaganda media from one side or the other. The legacy media now selects the stories it wants to publicize, as well as those it doesn't. Then it highlights and presents an intentionally biased rendering of that story. Finally, it knowingly presents half-truths and distortions and doesn't acknowledge or apologize when the truth comes out. Remember the Trump-Russia connection? Now convicted con man Michael Avenatti was spotlighted and interviewed by the legacy media over 100 times. And yet, I have yet to hear an apology. So, it used to be reliable sources of information are now intentionally distorted propaganda. I could go on and on with still more currents flowing through our society, but I think I made my point. Our society is changing, at a pace and a depth unprecedented in human history. Welcome to the Age of Turmoil. I believe our ability, both individually as well as organizationally, to successfully navigate these turbulent times is the greatest challenge we will face for the rest of our careers. So, what do? Well, we can formulate all kinds of big picture solutions. Everything from breaking up Facebook to multiplying charter schools to making Congress live by the rules it creates for everyone else. We can do any of those things. But my concern is more for individual responses. How do we as individuals successfully navigate this age of turmoil? How do we see ourselves and our families through it? Well, I think the first step is to become aware. The next step is to accept responsibility for dealing with it. After that, would you care to offer a solution? Feel free to offer your take on this in the comments section below. And stay tuned. I'll have some additional ideas on this. Okay? Before I close, let me just advocate for one thing. And that is, so one thing to do is put yourself into content, expose yourself to content, and expose yourself to connections with like-minded people, content that'll help you sort it all out and excel and gain excellence and influence, and connections with people who are like-minded. And you could do both those things in the XI community. That stands for excellence and influence community. It's $5 a month. I know. And it's a one-stop shop for content and connections. Give it a shot. Take a look. I'll put a link in the show notes. Okay, that's it. We're done. Bye-bye.